Welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. 12 years strong as we are commemorating our 12-year anniversary here at the PST Podcast Show here in April. We have got a fantastic guest to get into the Pittsburgh Steelers, what their offseason has looked like. We have from the Steel Curtain Network, our good friend Dave Schofield. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, it's nice to be back. I didn't know if you'd ever want to see me again, especially after the Steelers got embarrassed by the Eagles so bad last year, and you all were having this great run, this great roster building and all that, while the Steelers are just kind of stuck in mediocrity.
Stuck in media. Look, the Steelers I've always found to be a very interesting organization, an organization that has known from a historical standpoint success, and it has been a challenge as of late, Dave, and it's been a very interesting offseason as this team tries to get back to, I mean, I hesitate to use the word relevancy because it's the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, quite frankly, and they have been a relevant franchise for decades and decades in the National Football League. So I don't know. You're saying mediocrity, and I'm thinking, I want to see some good football coming from this team in the future as a lover and fan of football.
Yeah, I mean, well, when the team's always hovering, not always, but quite often hovering around 500, as you know, a lot of people talk about the non-losing season streak, which does go before Mike Tomlin a little bit, but it's, Mike Tomlin's held that the whole time. It's frustrating when you basically have the exact same results 2 seasons in a row, 10-7, first round exit in a game you're not all really competitive in.
Right.
It just feels like the same thing with the fan base, but it's hard to get there constantly, and the Steelers are getting there. So it's kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel like they're almost in like the Andy Reid era Eagles, whenever it was, there was so far you can go. Can you really get it next level?
Right.
And I know that's what a lot of Steelers fans are thinking right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will certainly want to dive into what the Steelers have done this offseason, specifically with regard to the NFL draft here. And let's get into some draft talk here, Dave, to start us off, because, I mean, the biggest storyline coming out of the NFL draft was that the Steelers didn't pick one of the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft class, but they did pick Will Howard in the 6th round. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on why they passed on quarterbacks like Jalen Milroe and Shedeur Sanders and took a player like Will Howard on day 3? I mean, is the Aaron Rodgers possibility maybe coming or going to come to fruition, or are they waiting for their quarterback of the future perhaps in next year's draft? What are your thoughts here in terms of the quarterback position, what we saw at the draft as well, Dave?
All right. Well, that's a big question. It really is. First of all, it's like they didn't take a top 4 quarterback, according to whom. You always have to ask that question.
There you go.
But when it came to everything with the Aaron Rodgers and the quarterback, we have a source inside the building that told us about 3 weeks before the draft, hey, the Aaron Rodgers stuff is not going to affect the Steelers' draft philosophy this year at all. We're like, okay, maybe that's true. Then Jerry Dulac, the ultimate Steelers insider, went on the Rich Eisen show the next week and said the exact same thing that we were told.
Yeah.
Then Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, leading up to the draft in their press conference, said it's not affecting what we are doing in the draft. And you know what? They drafted exactly what I would have expected if Aaron Rodgers would have told them he was coming before the draft, or if he wasn't coming before the draft. That the Steelers have kind of, they made the determination that their next, I don't know if you want to use the word franchise or long-term starting quarterback
of the future.
Was not going to be available in this draft. You were not going to have a quarterback you were drafting in this draft class at pick 21 that was going to be your starter for 2025 and then hopefully beyond. That's not what this quarterback class was. It's very questionable of any of the quarterbacks that doesn't have a last name of Ward being someone who's going to be starting for the majority of this season.
Right.
So that was their philosophy all along. So then what were you ultimately wanting if you were taking a quarterback in this draft And to me, I said it for a long time coming into it, is that you're looking for like a long-term backup is maybe what you could get here. I kept comparing it to Steeler great Landry Jones. That I don't know how familiar Philly fans would be with Landry Jones. He was with the Steelers for 2 years after being drafted in the fourth round before he even played. Then he was around for another 3 years. He was the backup to Big Ben a long time in there.
Yes.
So I'm like, if you're taking a quarterback in the fourth round, that's kind of what you want. Someone who could be a reliable backup, could step in, hopefully win you a game or two if they have to. The Steelers waiting all the way to the sixth round. I'm like, now if they even get that from Will Howard, that would be great. But I think that screams Will Howard right there. That someone who could be there if you need a spot start. And if he becomes more than that, great. But he's not expected to be.
Right.
So the Steelers have been, I mean, they're lined up to potentially get 4 compensatory draft picks next year in the draft. You take that firepower, and they have all their picks otherwise. The draft is in Pittsburgh. There's supposed to be a much better quarterback class than this year. Whether it is or not, I'm not getting into that. I don't break that down. But I just know that this class didn't have starters in the way that people think they were there. I feel like people like Jackson Dart filled the quarterback vacuum, that there wasn't the quarterbacks that were really there. So they kind of fill the vacuum we got to talk about quarterback. Who else are we going to talk about?
Right.
So that's why the Steelers, that was their philosophy going in, and they stuck to it.
I'm not sure how good this quarterback class is going to be based on what you were just saying. I think it's a fantastic point. And as we continue to talk about and look at the Steelers draft, Dave, with the Steelers' first 4 picks of this draft, 3 of them were defensive players and 2 of them were defensive line talent to help them out in the trenches. And even with linebacker Jack Sawyer, he's likely going to be a defensive player the Steelers defensive coordinator is going to use to rush opposing quarterbacks at some point down the road. So I'm wondering, do you like this building through the trenches type of philosophy that, I think we saw with this Steelers draft? And what are your thoughts on these overall picks, these top picks defensively that the Steelers took just recently?
Well, that's always what's interesting. And I'm sure you find this in Philadelphia as well. When you look at what the national narrative about your team versus the local narrative.
Yes.
The local narrative for Pittsburgh, it was not quarterback.
Okay.
It really was not quarterback for the draft. I mean, my goodness, placing a wager for the Steelers to take a defensive lineman in the first round of the draft was the easiest money I ever made.
Right.
I knew that was coming.
Meanwhile, I thought I was convinced, because one of my really close buddies is a Steelers fan. I was convinced Shedeur Sanders was going to the Steelers. Boy, was I wrong.
I was hoping that he wasn't at 21. I didn't want any quarterback at 21.
Yeah.
The Steelers made that mistake with Kenny Pickett a couple of years ago. You all were familiar with him. And that it's just, what if you don't, some people say, well, you're never going to find your quarterback if you don't take a shot and try to find him. Yes. But you could also hold your franchise back even more if you take a bad shot, and don't find a good one.
Absolutely.
So there's 2 different philosophies there. Back to the defense.
Yes,
the Steelers had not been drafting heavily on defense for quite some time. This is the first time they took a defensive player in the first round since 2019. This is also why the Steelers defense is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive in the NFL, is because they're having to pay players on second contracts. Unfortunately, a lot of those first round draft picks, the only one, Cam Hayward and TJ Watt are the only ones that are left that are still with the Steelers. So you're talking 2017 and 2011. They've been having to pay for free agents to come in. A lot of their draft picks are on the offensive side of the ball over the last several years. So you're not spending a lot of money there. You're having to spend a lot of money on defense. The pendulum needed to swing back the other way to try to balance it out. But the fact that they invested in the trenches is no surprise to me, and should be no surprise to you, because the person who sets the Steelers draft board is none other than Andy Weidel. And you all were very familiar with him. He came to the Steelers from Philadelphia. And what have the Steelers done in the 3 drafts since he's been the assistant GM? First round, offensive line, defensive line. That's the philosophy.
Yeah.
And they needed that. They let go of Larry Ogunjobi, who, not that he was a terrible player, but he was not performing up to his contract. So they let him go. They didn't add anyone else in free agency. And you could tell, hey, they're kind of looking at this draft class as being very, very deep with quality defensive linemen, that you had an idea that's what they were going to do. I felt that if Derek Harmon was there, he was going to be the pick all along. I was also a little smitten with Kenneth Grant, a little bit different guy.
Right.
But Harmon is more of like a Cam Hayward clone he's got 2 years left on his contract, and I don't see him playing beyond there. You've got to start looking to that as well. But then you add Wyatt Black in the 5th round as a big, massive nose tackle. This is a team that got gashed mainly in just 2 games last year. But they were both against the Baltimore Ravens. They were both at the end of the season. One was in the playoffs. Other than that, the Steelers overall still rank 6th against the run in 2024. So people have this idea of, the Steelers were so bad against the run. They really weren't. So, but they had a problem, like a lot of people were having a problem with the Baltimore Ravens. They faced them twice. Even if somebody like Wyatt Black, you just say, hey, you're not going to play very many snaps otherwise, but against Baltimore, be ready to go because you're going to be on the field a lot. Right. If that's what it takes, it's fine. Even Jack Sawyer, he's the complement to the Steelers' reserve outside linebacker, Nick Herbig, who great with a pass rush, not so good against the run. Sawyer, he's more of a run stopping edge rusher that can also rush the passer. So there you can see a lot of emphasis in saying, got to shore up that run defense going forward.
A lot of versatility there for sure. And building through the trenches, I think, is something we're going to see more in the future from the Pittsburgh Steelers, really, in a lot of ways, taking a page out of the Philadelphia Eagles book. Yeah. Dave, let everybody know where they can find you on the interwebs out there, on social media as well. Let folks know where they can listen to you as well, because you guys are doing great work over at the Steel Curtain Network, my friend.
Yeah, well, you can follow me personally on X at STLR Superfan Dad, but you're going to get some stuff there. If you really want to follow, you want to go to either steelcurtainnetwork.com. That's our website. I'm writing a lot there. Myself and Jeff Hartman are the guys that are. I mean, we have multiple writers, but you'll see our names more than anyone. We're the guys, the editors of the site. Also, Steel Curtain Network on YouTube. You can follow us there. Anywhere you get podcasts, Steel Curtain Network, you can get them there. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network. We have basically every NFL team, every MLB team. We have a lot of sports covered throughout Fans First Sports. So even if you just go to fansfirstsports.com, you can see what we have there. We have multiple Philadelphia Eagles podcasts on there as well. So there's lots of stuff that you can do there, but really just steelcurtainnetwork.com. You can't go wrong by going there.
Fantastic. And if you are new to following and listening to the Philadelphia Sports Table, you can find us on various social media sites as well. We are on Instagram. Search out the Philadelphia Sports Table there. We are on Twitter/X. I am on TikTok at Mr. Jeff Warren. Give me a follow over there. You can like our Facebook page. We are on Threads, and we are also, at least myself and Eric, are over on Blue Sky too. You can search Jeff Warren, search
Man, you're everywhere.
Exactly. We literally are everywhere, and it gets a little cumbersome at times. So as we're moving along with the conversation here, Dave, from an offensive perspective now, we talked about the quarterback position, and now this is a team that has DK Metcalf. He's going to be catching balls from whichever quarterback is going to be the starter. They also took running back Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round as well. Even though we are months before the start of the regular season, Dave, I'm wondering, what kind of identity do you think this Steelers offense is going to have this year? Because I think it's a team and offense that is looking for and searching for that identity. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. This will be the 2nd year of offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. Now, a lot of people think of him of his time in Atlanta, but really, if you want to see Arthur Smith's offense, you want to think about when he was the coordinator in Tennessee.
Right.
And when it comes to quarterback, what kind of quarterback does Arthur Smith have? It's a guy, back foot hits the ground, rip it over the middle. That's his kind of thing. And that's That's why Will Howard ended up being the best selection for the Steelers, even if it's only going to ever be a backup role, that would still be good. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whether it's Mason Rudolph, and believe it or not, there's a large portion of the Steelers fan base that they would just prefer to roll it with Mason Rudolph this year.
Yeah.
I know he didn't have the best year in Tennessee last year, but he came in and saved the season a couple years ago. And made one Mr. Kenneth Shane Pickett expendable. But before he moved on. But they didn't have those kind of quarterbacks with the Steelers last year. I think that's what they're kind of do. If it's Aaron Rodgers, I'm kind of indifferent to all that. I don't care who's the name on the back of the jersey for the quarterback. I'm gonna want him to succeed no matter what.
Right.
But the issue was you want to be able to run that outside zone, which that was not Najee Harris's forte.
Right.
Caleb Johnson, whole different story. But I didn't even necessarily need the Steelers to draft a running back high. I was very happy with Jaylen Warren. And then the Steelers added Kenneth Gainwell. And I like that combination. But now you add a Caleb Johnson who can be your 3rd and 1 running back. The Steelers didn't have that before.
Right.
So they found it in the draft, and they didn't have to go looking in free agency when the draft was over. I didn't expect Caleb Johnson to be there in the 3rd round for the Steelers. So that just really brought more to their offense. But unless you have that constant threat in the passing game, the Steelers didn't have a wide receiver 2 last year.
Right.
And I mean, my goodness, when they played the Eagles, they didn't even have a wide receiver 1 because George Pickens was out. So a lot of people said, "Oh, well, they'll trade George Pickens now that they have DK Metcalf." They're the same player. They do too much of the same stuff. I'm like, do you mean to tell me if the Steelers had 2 George Pickens, they wouldn't put him on the field?
Right.
Or if they had 2 DK Metcalfs, they wouldn't put him on the field? What's the problem having both of them? You got to figure it out, with the X and the Y and all that other wide receivery stuff. But I feel that they have more of a threat there, and you got to find that identity. And the trenches is where it is, and that's also where we'll probably get into this a little bit more. That there are some questions there with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Absolutely. So, yeah, if they're we definitely are gonna have some Eagles fans who are going to be watching this and listening to this, and I can tell you right now, there's a lot of Eagles nations that are glad Kenny Gainwell is on the Steelers now at this point, Dave, to be honest with you. Yeah, there are a lot of Eagles fans out there. I always respected the guy. I really did. But there are a lot within Eagles Nation that are saying, okay, we've had our share of Kenny Gainwell at this point. But as we're moving along with the conversation here, I'm wondering, because again, we're talking about identity with this team, specifically with offense, the last topic that we dove into. But when it comes to the team overall, looking to make that next level jump, hopefully, I'm wondering what has been the best part of this offseason thus far for the Steelers? I know it's a general question, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, we just mentioned it. It's the DK Metcalf.
Yeah,
it really is adding that receiver. I mean, the Steelers don't pay guys that weren't with them.
Right.
Like they did with DK Metcalf.
Right.
Some people are like, oh, the Steelers, they got to get out of the rut. They're just doing the same old thing. The DK Metcalf move was not the typical Steelers move. I mean, you bring him in, 5-year deal.
Yeah.
If you look at the average per year, he's basically the highest paid guy on the Steelers and has never played a snap for them. I think that'll change here by the time the season gets around with TJ Watt and an extension there. So that's not typical for them, but that's been their biggest thing of the offseason because it was such a glaring hole throughout the 2024 season. And people want to say, well, quarterback, who's going to throw these guys the ball? You really want to know if the quarterback to take you forward was not available in free agency or the draft this year, then it is what it is. All you can do is try to quote unquote quarterback proof your team.
Yeah.
And honestly, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Trust me, I'm not knocking Jalen Hurts at all, but Jalen Hurts does not have to play out of his mind for the Philadelphia Eagles to win a game. Now, yes. I think he played out of his mind in the Super Bowl, and that's why it was a blowout.
Right.
So you're talking about as long as Jalen Hurts was just out there getting the job done, he had enough of everything else for the Eagles to constantly win games. Bringing in the Andy Weidel philosophy, the Steelers, that's just what they need to try to build towards now. If you don't have the guy, you have to prepare your team to be ready to be the best it can be when you get the guy.
Absolutely. Folks, we are again talking to Dave Schofield here. So very much in tune with what is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers and specifically what's happening around the NFL. We are going to take a quick break just to pay some bills. We're going to be back in just a bit with more Steelers talk. All right, we are back. And again, talking to Dave Schofield. Great conversation about this Philadelphia, dear Lord, Pittsburgh Steelers
Pennsylvania
team. Yes, exactly. Pennsylvania team here. What's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers during the course of this offseason? So just a couple more topics I wanted to dive into with you, Dave. Even after this NFL draft, some of these players, as we know, they're not going to be starters. I mean, you essentially were saying that earlier in our conversation. They're not going to be starters right out of the gate. So with that being said, two-part question for you here in terms of this team heading into this 2025 regular season. What is the biggest strength of this Steelers team heading into this season? And then we'll get into the biggest weakness of this team as well. Let's talk about the strengths. What are those from your vantage point here?
All right. Well, the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers is still their defense. And honestly, sometimes that makes fans very nervous. This is a modern NFL. You have to be able to score. Well, you know what? You also have to be able to stop teams.
Right.
Because just in our own division, the AFC North, you have the Cincinnati Bengals. They could score like crazy. They're the number one passing offense, one of the top offenses in the league. Couldn't even make the playoffs because the defense was just so bad. So there's a trick to this. I mean, you all were able to take out the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. What the Chiefs have been just as focused, or if not more focused on defense as they have been on offense. They can let Patrick Mahomes do his thing, but it's really keeping their opponents constantly under 27 points is really, not on average, but in every game is what's been allowing them to do things. They haven't even had to, the Chiefs last year barely had to score over 30 points, but they didn't need to. So it's still defense when it comes to the Steelers. It makes fans nervous because it's not the modern NFL, but it's not the flashy NFL is what it is. If you can have that defense that can keep that team from scoring, even if it's just field goals instead of touchdowns, that's what it's going to be. And that's constantly been the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where it gets tricky is when you look at that defense and you see, hey, you've got an aging Cam Hayward, even though he just played out of his mind last season.
He did.
You've got an aging TJ Watt, who's still good for another big contract, but he kind of fizzled as the season went on last year. A lot of that was he was dinged up. He was hurt, not injured, just not 100% as he was going on. And the problem with defense is you can play lights out defense for 50 snaps. And on snap 51, boom, touchdown, it's done.
Yeah.
You have to do it play in and play out. So sometimes that makes a little bit nervous, but it's still going to be the defense. And the Steelers actually, as much as, you want to fortify the run up front, they were a little bit lacking with their pass defense last year. Yeah. So they bring in Darius Slay, another Philadelphia Eagle, only on a 1-year deal, but as some of their younger guys are coming along, and hopefully that can, another aging guy, how much does he have left in the tank? So there's some question marks with the defense based on age, but it really is set up that it's the strength of the team. If the defense can keep it rolling and make the offense not have to work as hard, be able to run the ball more. That seems like it's going to be the philosophy. Whether or not it'll work to success is a whole different story.
But it's interesting what you said about the modern day NFL and the expectations of what the modern day NFL is, Dave, because I think the modern day NFL is changing. We have seen so much more of an emphasis on the defense over the years. Defense is being able to adapt very well to a passing league. We are seeing a lot of changes in this regard, seeing a lot of changes to the way the quarterback has to move in and out of the pocket. We are seeing the rushing attack becoming even more prevalent than it was possibly 5 years ago. The modern day NFL is absolutely changing. And it's a good segue into what the biggest weakness is on this Steelers team, because there's certainly some weaknesses. There's weaknesses with every NFL team out there, all 32 teams. But when it comes to the Steelers, what do you see as their biggest weakness as the modern day NFL is really, really changing here? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mentioned one with the defenses that, concerns over an aging defense at times.
Yeah.
But really the bigger one that's the weakness, and to me, it's going to define the Steelers season, and it is uncertainty on the offensive line. Or maybe I should say unprovenness, because with the Steelers offensive line this year, yes, they've invested heavily in the offensive line early and often in the NFL draft, not this year because they had done it the previous two.
Right.
They've got 2 first-round draft picks up from 2023 and 2024 as their tackles. They've got a second-round draft pick from last year in their center. They've got a 4th-round draft pick at guard, and then they have the veteran former Eagle Isaac Seumalo.
Yep.
That's their offensive line. Now, so the question is, how much does Seumalo have left, and are all these young guys going to work out? Because we know every draft pick ultimately doesn't work. And when all these guys are coming into it together where it's kind of a make or break. I mean, Broderick Jones has the biggest make or break year of anyone for the Steelers entering year 3. We knew he was a raw prospect, Steelers fans did, whenever he was drafted. So it was going to take a little bit of time. So this is a big year for him. Then your first round draft pick last year only plays 1 game before he's out for the season. How's he going to be coming back? So there's question marks there. Could it work out really great? Could this line come together and really, really blow people out of the water? They could. Or it could be an absolute failure. If you have 2 guys that just can't get it done, then you're just going to be scrambling all season. So it's the weakness of it isn't that they are definitely weak. It's that it's so uncertain going into the season.
Again, folks, talking to Dave Schofield from the Steel Curtain Network, steelcurtainnetwork.com. Great content that they are putting up, and with their podcast as well. Please head on over there. Great content, like I said. And close us out here, Dave. I do tend to wonder about Mike Tomlin and how long he still has as the head coach of this Steelers team, longest tenured head coach in the National Football League. He's won 191 games, lost 118. He's tied twice. That's his record. 191, 118, and 2 as a head coach in this league. That's a winning percentage of .617. But things have been challenging, certainly for him and the organization in recent years. I guess, again, to close us out, what are your thoughts on what this upcoming season means to Mike Tomlin as the head coach, and what happens to his overall tenure in terms of this upcoming season?
Well, a lot of people would have think that Mike Tomlin could be on the hot seat coming into things, but honestly, the Steelers didn't have much change with their coaching staff this past season because the way ownership works now currently, if you don't have an expiring contract, they're not letting you go.
Yeah.
When the Steelers fired Matt Canada midseason on the last year of his deal, that was a really big deal because they simply have the philosophy of they won't pay a coach to not coach, that they won't fire him. They just won't renew their contract.
Yeah.
So Mike Tomlin's got 2 more years left on his contract. I'm pretty sure it's 2. If it's not 2, it's 3, but I'm pretty sure it's 2. So he's not going anywhere as long as he wants to be around for the next couple seasons. Seems to be the way that Art Rooney II is doing things. Some Steeler fans have really they're souring to the message and everything of Mike Tomlin. The fan base is. That doesn't mean that the team is. It's crazy when I don't know how much you put into those NFLPA grades that they put out there and everything. I mean, I don't really, but when the Steelers head coach gets an A and the owner gets an F, It kind of is telling you what the players are thinking
Right.
about how things are going within the organization. So, Mike, I get that there's a large fan base that would like to see the Steelers move on. And if they do, I still see it as an Andy Reid type situation in Philly, that it just gets to a point where you've been there a long time, they've had you a long time, you're just kind of, and you could both see success by moving on. The
Yeah.
Eagles saw more success after Reid. Reid saw more success after the Eagles. Sometimes that could be it. But I don't know that that's where Mike Tomlin is. And I think he's going to coach as long as he wants to, at least for a couple more seasons and maybe even beyond. So it's a really tough topic to approach with Steelers Nation, because if you want to, if for some people, if you say anything positive about Mike Tomlin,
Right,
you're
right.
just a Tomlin apologist. If you say anything negative about Mike Tomlin, you're a Tomlin hater. And I get frustrated because I want to say what he does well and what he doesn't. I want to have honest conversations. And it's really tough to do that sometimes because it's really become polarizing with that. But I don't see him going anywhere for a while. So I don't even see it being worth the discussion. Teams are like, well, until they get rid of it, not teams, sorry, fans are like, until they get rid of the coach, nothing's going to change. Well, they're not getting rid of the coach. So
Right.
find something else
Right.
to talk about. They're not going into this season without Mike Tomlin.
There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of
Yeah.
gray at the end of the day.
So to me, I want to look for ways to improve this team that are founded in reality. And the reality is Mike Tomlin is the head coach this year.
Yeah.
So thinking that the only thing that's going to change the Steelers is by changing the coach, you're just going to get more frustrated. This team is not a coaching staff away from a Super Bowl. So you can replace the whole staff, and it's not like that's going to be the issue. They had other things they need to address. So it's sometimes you only want to worry about one variable at a time.
Yeah.
They did retain some coaches that I didn't think that they should have, but once again, they had years left on their contract, and that's why they did it. But Mike Tomlin shines more this time of year than he does throughout the season. But one thing you got to give him is, my goodness, when's the last time the Steelers have been the under of their projected win total? It hasn't happened since the year Ben Roethlisberger got hurt in the second game of the season.
Yeah.
They're constantly doing better than expected. And so you've got, and when you look at what's expected, you generally look at the roster. So there's at least something going on there that's keeping the Steelers winning games. And ultimately, I want to feel like the Steelers can win every game they go into. And that's what it's really all about every season and every week.
Well, it was a great conversation again, folks. Dave Schofield from the Steel Curtain Network, steelcurtainnetwork.com. Dave, buddy, it was great talking to you. Always enjoy our conversations. And I hope to talk to you at some other point down the road, my friend. Come back and join us. I'd love to have you.
I was going to say, I'll come back anytime. Unfortunately, it seems like the only way we would be speaking in this season would be as if it's an all Pennsylvania Super Bowl. And
right.
You all have reasonable expectations of that. Steelers fans are like, yeah, let's just get a playoff win. Haven't had one of them in a long time.
So. Well, regardless of that, I would love to have you back on the show to talk more Steelers, talk more NFL. Always a pleasure, my friend. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.